So the New York Jets in 2013 looked like a mediocre football team, and frankly, that's because they were. They didn't have quite as bad of a season as they had the season before, but they still never really looked like a playoff team at any point in time. But to the team's credit, they did finish out strong. They were 5-7 with 4 weeks to go, and it looked like they were well out of the mix. And they went 3-1 in their last 4 weeks. They ended up finishing 8-8, finishing third in the division, and managing to save head coach Rex Ryan's job at least for one more season. Um, when you look at the New York Jets for 2013, though, to me, it shows the organizational mistakes that the Jets have made in recent years by focusing so much energy and attention and resources to one side of the football, the defensive side, that they have criminally neglected the offensive side of the ball. And you saw that play out in 2013 as the team scored 10 points or fewer in 5 of their games. 5 games, they scored 10 points or less. And it is very hard with a complete and total inability to consistently put points on the board to be able to win football games in the National Football League. And for so many years, the Jets organization just flat out seems to have dropped the ball and failed to understand that they need to be more than a one dimensional football team, especially when that one dimension, frankly, while it's good, is not as great as you would anticipate for an organization that's devoted so much energy and resources and draft picks to the defensive side of the ball. So you were expecting, I think everybody was expecting, that the Jets were going to focus a lot of their energies on the offensive side of the ball this offseason, and to a large degree they did. They went out in free agency and signed Eric Decker away from the AFC champion Denver Broncos. They brought in Chris Johnson, who had been released by the Tennessee Titans. They brought in Michael Vick from the Philadelphia Eagles to compete for the starting job with Geno Smith. They bring in guys like Jacoby Ford. But then when it comes to the draft, they still couldn't help themselves. And I don't dispute that safety wasn't a need for the Jets, because it was. But again, another first round pick spent on the defensive side of the damn ball. Calvin Pryor, you bring him in, and I expect him to be a nice player, and I expect him to be a physical presence at the safety position that the Jets have lacked for several years. But again, how many times can you spend picks just on the defensive side of the ball and expect to be able to fix your problems on the offensive side of the ball and hope to become a more complete, well-balanced football team? And again, especially when that one, dimension that you have that's not bad for you, the defensive side of the ball, isn't that great. It's good, but it's not great. They spent their second round pick on Jason Morrow, who is a guy that you would anticipate at some point in time will provide another weapon over the short and intermediate range in the Jets passing game. But the question is how much is that is going to happen in his rookie season. Now, in terms of the Jets and their losses in the offseason, I wouldn't say they lost anybody that was devastating. Antonio Cromartie is probably the most notable loss. Gone also are Austin Howard and Mark Sanchez. But they didn't really lose a bunch of key players, and that's a good thing for them. Now, looking ahead to 2014, what would be some of the strengths for the New York Jets? Well, the defensive line is flat out. I mean, you've got guys like Muhammad Wilkerson and one of last year's first-round picks, Sheldon Richardson, up there on the front. The Jets have a really nice defensive line, and you better when you spent multiple first-round picks on the position. I also think the Jets aren't getting enough credit or respect for the running game that they should field in 2014. Because you look at both Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell last year, they both averaged over 4 yards a carry. So when they got the opportunities, they did a good job with them. Now you add in a guy who a few seasons ago rushed for over 2,000 yards, and while he's not the same back he once was, is still a guy that is a starting running back in the National Football League, and that's Chris Johnson. And you're talking about a very, very nice three-headed monster there at running back for the Jets. And furthermore, you've got three running backs that each bring something different to the table. Johnson, a little bit more of a home run threat. Chris Ivory, more of that physical between the tackles type of guy, and a Bilal Powell, a guy that can do a bunch of little different things. I really like the running game for the New York Jets, and I don't think they're getting enough attention and credit for the running game that they have, which if you're going to have a great defense or you hope to have a great defense, it's really nice to match that up with a great running game, a running game that can pick up yards, especially winning time, and a running game that can control the clock, and can really help you in winning time the last 4 or 5 minutes of games. Now, looking at the Jets in 2014, some of the big question marks I have for them heading into the season, Geno Smith. Here was a guy that at moments looked like he was incredibly in over his head as a rookie in 2013. And to be fair, how many rookie quarterbacks would come in and end up smelling like roses with that shitty supporting cast that he had around him on the offensive side of the ball? But as the season progressed, I think Geno Smith showed some progression. He showed some improvement and became an asset, and played well down the stretch of the end of the season. And it's a question now, is he going to be in 2014 more of the Geno Smith we saw in the first half of the season, or is he going to play a little bit more like the Geno Smith that we saw the last 3 or 4 weeks of the year, the Geno Smith that looked like he was a capable NFL starting quarterback? I still have questions about the skill players for the New York Jets because, yeah, they brought in Eric Decker in free agency, and yeah, they've got a guy like Jeremy Curley, in the fold. They brought in Jace Amaro in the draft, but again, Jace Amaro, second-round pick, how much is he really going to contribute right away? Eric Decker, you paid him basically number 1 wide receiver money when he's really more of a number 2 wide receiver. Looking at the running backs, like I said, are solid, but Geno Smith still doesn't have a lot to throw to, and I was very disappointed in the Jets for not doing a better job of addressing the wide receiver and tight end positions more this offseason via free agency in the draft, because if they think they did enough to address it, then they are sadly mistaken. I also have questions about the secondary too. Dee Milner was a disaster as a rookie, and it looks like he's off to a flying start in this training camp and preseason. Kyle Wilson has never lived up to the status of being a first-round pick. They lost Antonio Cromartie. Calvin Pryor coming in, I think, will be a huge upgrade at safety. But this is a secondary that you've invested multiple high picks in the draft on, and yet you really haven't gotten a whole lot out of it. Their third-round pick this year, Dexter McDougal, he's already out for the year with the torn ACL. So I have some serious questions about the Jets secondary and whether they can hold up against some of the explosive passing offenses in the AFC. Now, looking ahead to their schedule in 2014, they've got the AFC West, the NFC North, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh are their other AFC conference games. You look at the schedule, and I think there's a real chance for trouble for the Jets early on in the year, especially weeks 2 through 7. They have a very, very tough stretch against a lot of teams that people envision either being playoff teams or being in the mix for the playoffs. They go to Green Bay, then they host Chicago and Detroit, then they go to San Diego, they host Denver, and they go to New England. So even if the Jets make some strides in the offensive end, even if their defense sits there and plays better and plays like a top 5 unit like so many people automatically associate them being, you're still talking about a Jets team that has a very difficult stretch of schedule right away from the very beginning. So you're talking about a team that could sit here and go 1-6 or 2-5 to start the season, and they will have dug themselves an incredibly deep hole that they might not be able to get out of. Their keys to success for 2014, well, first and foremost, they've got to find a way to do well in that 6-week stretch between weeks 2 to week 7. They got to figure out a way to win 2, if not 3 games out of those 6 if they have any thought at all of contending for the wild card position in the playoffs in the AFC. They need Geno Smith to step up, progress, and improve and establish himself as a guy that can be the long-term answer at quarterback for the New York Jets. They need their wide receivers and their tight ends to play better. Geno Smith can't do it all himself. He needs more help. And guys like Eric Decker need to play up to the contract that he was given. Jeremy Curley needs to progress. Stephen Hill needs to do something. Jace Amaro needs to show that he can be a starting NFL tight end. And they need that defense to be a top 5 defense with all the resources and investment they have put on that side of the ball over the past 4 to 5 years. It is time now for the Jets defense to be the gangrene dominant unit that a lot of people think they are, that they frankly really aren't. If the Jets have any delusions or any thoughts at all of seriously being a playoff contending team in 2014, that defense must play at a top 5 level all year long. And ultimately, when it comes to the Jets, I just don't think a lot of these things will happen. I think that stretch of schedule at the beginning of the year is incredibly difficult and is going to put the Jets behind the 8 ball in a very bad way. When I look at this team, I see the potential for an implosion. Oftentimes, when a team plays well to save a guy's job one season and it still didn't result in them making the playoffs, I think it's only a matter of time before the coach loses the team and he ends up having a disastrous season. And I really see that happening for the New York Jets. I don't think they've given Geno Smith nearly enough help on the offensive side of the ball. I think he'll continue to struggle. And if they go to Vic, it's not going to be a whole lot better. I think that defense isn't going to play like a top 5 defense, more like a top 10 or 15 unit. They might be able to run the ball effectively, which will help keep them in some games. But I just don't see a playoff team in the Jets. And in fact, like I said, I see the potential for this team to kind of implode as the season goes along. I think the Jets will end up 4-12 or 5-11 and bring up the rear in the AFC East and be very real contenders to get a top 5 pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. Go ahead, Jets fans. Crap on me all you want. I guess that's why they're called predictions, and we'll see how they play out throughout the season. You can come back in 3 or 4 months and tell me whether I'm a genius or I look like a moron. But that's my 2 cents on the Jets.